go. So, a season for nonviolence, a call to conscious action. So, we are in the season of nonviolence already. It starts on January 30th, but not to despair because it is 64 days. So, it goes through April 4th. And the significance of those days are that it really is to honor the legacies of Mahatma Gandhi and the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. So we start in January, which of course is when we celebrate Dr. King's birthday and Mahatma Gandhi's birthday in April. So that's where we get the span of 64 days. And it's really supposed to be a framework for intentional nonviolent communication and action, dialogue, and education. And it's rooted, of course, in the principles of peace and justice. And this season is it in my opinion, aligns deeply with New Thought, with our ideals and principles in unity. And it gives us an opportunity to really embody these principles. And so for me, it's truly anchored in the fifth principle that we are to live the truth we know. And if you want a more traditional stance, practical Christianity, it's the practical part of it is to really take our teachings out into dialogue and into the manifest experience of how we engage in both our within our spiritual communities and within the broader community and the world. So AGNT, which is Association for Global New Thought, has been, I think, gosh, since, and Jim, maybe you remember more than I do, but I believe they've been doing Season for Nonviolence for 20 years or more. I think it started like around 2004, early 2000s that they kind of claimed, so it's really a new thought effort to claim that. And I'll show you some resources later. Of course, the website hasn't been updated in a little bit, but there's still a treasure trove of resources there. Um, so you may have already in your spiritual communities or have experienced a unity community that does engage the season for nonviolence. I'll also share with you Unity Church of Overland Park has a rich history. Um, here we go. A rich history of celebrating it from years ago. Of course, Mary Omwick was one of the founders of AGNT and was one of the first to bring Season for Nonviolence into New Thought as well. So I found on our server all kinds of stuff, much of which is outdated, but I will bring forward at least one document that I think will help you, that you'll be able to use. So why Season for Nonviolence, which is often abbreviated SNV. So you may see that on other websites as well. So I wanted to just sort of give you a visual of that so you can get used to it. A Season for Nonviolence, why it matters in unity. For very clear-cut reasons. It aligns with our spiritual principles of oneness, love, and consciousness. It calls for active commitment. That's our fifth principle again. Bring it into action. Live the truth we know. An active commitment to justice and accountability. It's relevant in today's polarized political climate. And, I suppose if we dial the clock back, we could probably stop anywhere and still have number three be relevant. But it feels especially polarized today. And in my lifetime, this feels very different than ever before, or at least more extreme. And then the fourth, it bridges spirituality with social responsibility. So is it enough to sit on the mountain in deep meditation and prayer, or must we come down from the mountain and into the communities and it's the God among us, right, in the space between us and within our communities. So this is why it matters for us to hold this conversation, whether or not you bring this forward within the framework of Season for Nonviolence or any time of year. It's always relevant, but here it is for us, gift wrapped into the calendar. So more on alignment with spiritual principles, it emphasizes oneness, love, and the power of thought. So this is not an effort to try to claim sameness. It's not an effort to try to, bring everyone into congruence in terms of ideology or political stance, but it's really underneath that the oneness and the power of love and the power of thought to truly manifest the world that we would like to see. We often say that works for all. I think that If we could just get it to work better, like, let's just start there, right? Oh, and here's Ulysses. So we got more people trickling in. So that emphasizes oneness, love, and the power of thought. It also encourages nonviolent communication and conscious activism. So the more we bring these terms into the zeitgeist, into our communities, and into our conversations, the more we can hold them in our awareness and truly embody and embrace them. So, how often are you thinking about nonviolent communication? Right? How often are you thinking about conscious activism? How often are you talking about it in your communities of influence, whether you have a pulpit ministry or an alternative style ministry, or whether you're a minister at large, or just a spiritual person at large in the world? How often are you holding those phrases and terms in mind? This gives us really sort of an excuse or an effort or an appointment with the calendar to just start bringing these terms forward and to work with this aspect of our consciousness. It uses prayer and mindfulness for peace and accountability. So it gives us a time for focus, much like Advent, much like Lent, and all of these other sort of seasons. It gives us an opportunity to practice, to bring these ideas in more consciously with awareness into our practice. Season for Nonviolence calls for a collective accountability to our principles. And what I know, and I think if you are paying attention to our Facebook groups with our Unity ministers, there are a lot of people asking the question, what is mine to do? How political can I get, or should I get? I've seen people talk about, I have a rule of no politics, and yet they're really struggling with, now how do I define that? Do I mean nonpartisan? Of course, because we have a legal obligation to that. But how do we define what is political, especially when we're talking about matters of justice and rights? So I think it's really important for us to bring these conversations forward so that we can increase our competence, improve our competence as spiritual leaders around this topic. So relevance in the current political climate. I mentioned that a little bit before, that for me personally, this feels like a very extremely divided time. And you may be able to say that in any decade. There may be some times that we can isolate it, but right now it just the danger. And if it's not actually true, the fact that it feels that way for many people is really important to notice. So we have the heightened polarization. We have civil rights rolling back, at least an effort to do that. And in some place, laws are already being passed or reversed to protect people. We have the rise of political extremism and disinformation at a time when we have more access to information than we ever have before, more easily accessible information. We also have a rise of disinformation. So that creates chaos. It creates stress and anxiety in the world, and it in some ways it can create apathy. So it's really important to notice the spiritual impact, the emotional and psychological impact of what is happening in the world right now. And so it calls for spiritually grounded activism and bridge building. So this is the point. This is like the appointment for us right now, is to truly remain spiritually grounded and to bring that in. If you don't like the word activism, I'm going to invite you to just breathe into that a little bit. And if you want to anchor it on activating the fifth principle, activating in terms of living the truth we know, activating it into the world. God has chosen to activate itself through each and every one of us. And so let us activate the principles and the knowing of our spiritual ideals and principles into the world. And that is bridge building right there. That's the key. It creates a bridge for those who are living in extreme fear right now, and some of it, much of it, very valid. Those who are confused, those who are, unsure what to do, and particularly as spiritual people, so that we aren't furthering the divide between what's happening in the world over there and what's happening in our spiritual community, or even our personal spiritual life over here, and keeping those separate. Like, it's really important for us right now to, I think I skipped a slide, to to engage that bridge building, because there is one presence, there is one life. So therefore, we want to really bring our whole selves into all aspects of our experiences. I feel like I'm kind of racing through this. Does anyone want to share any thoughts? Or I want to welcome a few of you who came in late. Elissa, welcome, welcome. Good to see you. Does anyone have any thoughts or anything to add? How is this sitting with you so far? Is anyone doing anything with the season for nonviolence in their communities, either spiritual communities or otherwise? Oh, good. Then we are. Oh, Robin, I see your hand up.
I just wanted to react to your first question. I agree that I've been having a lot of inner conflict about when I speak publicly or write publicly, and I'm wanting to address some of these really challenging issues. I feel like I'm constantly needing to craft my words so that I don't offend any particular belief structure or political group. But it's very difficult now because it seems that so many issues have become politicized. And so there's so many things you can say that trigger another person. So I would love to hear throughout this time together more conversation about that. Like, I always go back to the letter from the Birmingham jail when Martin Luther King was saying, where are the churches? Why are the churches not stepping up into leadership and speaking out about this racism and this brutality and so forth? So that's always kind of been in my mind as a conflict with the concept of a nonprofit not being political or speaking politically. So thank you for raising that.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's the conversation that we need to have. Um, we sort of have this allergy around the term politics. I even had someone who went through CSL training say to me that it's just there's no politics in the church. We're going to keep politics out of it. Well, how are we defining the word politics? Like, I think legally we are bound to be nonpartisan. The idea that we are to keep politics out of our pulpits is absurd to me, because everything can be politicized. So we can't judge it based on whether something has been politicized or not. But even if you look and isolate, the ministry of Jesus was very subversive to the politics of the time. Our ideals are political. The statement that we are all one is political. The statement that there is one divine presence is political, because there are other religious traditions that don't hold that same ideal. And all of our systems impact our political systems. All of our spiritual systems impact the manifestation of our political systems and our governments. Even here in God we trust. So even though we don't, in the United States, we're supposed to have freedom of religion. The separation of church and state was to keep the state out of the church's business. So the idea that we can that I, as a queer woman, can stand in a pulpit is already political. Like, just by showing up, I'm already bringing politics to the pulpit. So when I open my mouth, personally, I'm more mindful of the things I say, because I know that I already bring a level of subversion with me just by being who I am. So I think there's a level of awareness that's really important for us to cultivate and to keep in mind. However, it feels sleepy is the best kindest way I can say it. It feels sleepy to say that we have to keep politics out of our spiritual communities in whatever form those communities take. That's an impossible task. So if we can get over that, and then it becomes a question of how how do we bring these conversations forward? How do we provide medicine to people, spiritual medicine, without creating more stress, more division? Where you might hear someone say, I've heard this before, I come to church on Sunday to get away from all of that. Valid, totally valid. And someone else, who's like, I come to church on Sunday to figure out how to get through the week and deal with everything that's happening in the world. Totally valid. And so, how, as a minister, and so if your pulpit is not a pulpit, just sort of translate that into your community. How do you provide the spiritual medicine and cultivate the culture around you to really truly meet the needs of both people, while keeping alive this, I'll go back to this asterisk here, calls for a collective accountability to our principles, right? Who else? Any thoughts about that? Either what I've said or the question that Robin raised.
So right now in our church, we don't have a minister, so the LUTs are kind of taking turns speaking. And in the fall, I put together a program kind of loosely based off a friend of mine who's a Methodist minister, called Do Unto Others. And I called out at the very beginning, there's a lot of division. We're going to have an election. There's going to be people on each side who are hurting. There's going to be people on each side who are happy. You're going to be in one place or another. It does affect us in our humanness. Yeah. And then we proceeded to have a series of, how do we do unto others? And we were able to focus on, love and kindness. And there was like 5 topics. And I did it again recently because I was asked by a member of the congregation. I'm a chaplain, so I hear things. I hear people's prayer requests. In a women's group, we had like tables of 6, and we have a prayer circle. 3 out of 6 people. I'm not sleeping. My anxiety is so high. It's really affecting people. And I had one of my chaplains just say to me, nobody's talking about it from the front of the room. Nobody is recognizing that there's a lot of us out here hurting. There's people in the Spanish ministry who are afraid. I think we actually had someone recently get picked up by ICE. She didn't end up getting deported, but there's a lot in the room, and there's a lot of anxiety. It's so big that our kids are feeling it, and expressing it in some ways, And so I went there this past Sunday, not in a political way, but in a way to take our 5th principle and say, I know this principle is not necessarily about activism. Your action might be to sit in prayer, but your action when you go into prayer and say, what is mine to do? It might be to write a letter to your senator. It might be to go join a march. It might be to stay here and pray for the people in the march. It could, there's all levels of what it could be, but I went there. The one LUT that's kind of acting as our spiritual liaison, she's like, ooh, girl, you are walking the edge. But, they're not getting a steady diet of that since there's several of us circling through. But I've chosen to be the one who's not going to be afraid to say, I know there's some people in this room that are hurting because of these things that are coming or happening. So
such a beautiful thing to model, Lisa, to not be afraid, because there are people just, I imagine, sitting around the dinner table who are afraid to bring something up, because they don't want to cause division at the dinner table. They don't want to ruffle any feathers. And, back to, I think Robin is the one who, talked about the letters from Birmingham. It's the people who are not speaking up to stop the inhumane things that are being brought forward. That's how it then happens, right? So, we have to really be in a time where, all of these conversations, these DEIJB conversations, first of all, like, let's just presence DEI being thrown out and outlawed everywhere and dropped everywhere, has really taken a toll on me on this, because I do this support call for our region, but I also have been working with Unity of Louisville I did a weekend intensive with them around DEIJB, and I'm now in the middle of teaching a 7-week class to them. And so the weekend intensive was first with the board, then with a full day with ministry leaders, and then a Sunday morning, and then with the congregation, a workshop. So there were like different levels, and then the people who are, in leadership, really, they were there the whole weekend, really took a deeper dive. And then the 7-week class is open to anyone. And so as someone who is doing this work and watching what's happening, um, i- it's um, it's taking a toll on me. I'll just say that, like, because now I have to self-reflect on what is it that we're actually doing here, and the whole idea of, like, should we just change the name and do the same work, and what's the power in DEI? If we just stick with the sort of acronym, we sort of lose sight of what it really is: diversity, equity, inclusiveness, justice, belonging. Like, to really, like, we're going to outlaw those. Like, what kind of sense does that make? So when we choose the road of not being afraid to speak to these things that are being in the media, and from the highest office in this country, are sort of being reverted and thrown out and desecrated. It does take a courage to do that. But when you can do it from that collective accountability to our principles, it's the bridge is there, right? And it makes sense. And I love what you said, Lisa, that really, there are so many different ways to get involved. For you, it may not be a conversation. For you, it might be sitting in prayer, like directed prayer. For you, it may be going to a march. For you, there are so many different ways. Calling your congressman, like be aware of this sort of slacktivism, I call it, social media slacktivism, where if you complain about something on social media or sign a petition on social media, you think you're, an activist, or you think you've done something. And I offer that that's more slacktivism. Like, you've done the least of it. Like, pick up the phone and call your congressman, send an email to your congressman. You can do that. And that's something I want to add actually to my resource list. I left it off. So remember, the Justice and Witness Ministries. And that's something that I share with my congregation. You can go to their website and you can choose any topic that they have there, which are all the like main topics that are kind of up right now, including climate, human rights, LGBTQ rights, all of those things. And it will populate an email to your congressperson, your representative in your location. So you put your name and address in. You can, and it comes from the perspective as a person with faith. But then you can also customize the email, so you don't have to use the template that they provide for you, but it does a nice job of creating that template for you, and it will go directly to your personal representative. So, like, there are action that we can take, but Lisa, it's so important what you're saying is, to let people like have permission to do what is yours to do. But if we don't engage these conversations in our spiritual communities, then I think people feel are going to be less likely to take action. And it's literally our fifth principle. And Elissa, I see you writing in the chat the wonderful things that you're doing. Facebook prayers daily. And I don't mean to dismiss what happens on social media at all. It's just to keep aware that it's part of the whole picture. The power of prayer, of course, is not slacktivist. So making daily Facebook prayers on the theme, and guest speakers taken SNB message to the pulpit and crafted. Oh, I see. So when it's on the pulpit, you're crafting YFM lessons for the community. Wonderful. And if someone is saying, I'm not here for politics, say, tell me more. And then share that, for you, it's about human rights, and human rights aren't politics. It is politicized. And I think that's where we have to stay really clear. Anything and everything can be politicized. Me marrying a woman is not political, except that it has been politicized, right? So that's, I love how you're wording that, Elissa. And my message is love over hate. Typically, this is where agreement rests. And that's it. We have more agreement than we have disagreement. And we sort of break those barriers down. Immigration right now is huge. And we're seeing that not everybody can even break that down to a place of love and kindness. And it is terrifying, because what happens in that is we lose a sense of the humanity of all people, and then behind that, the divinity of all people. So yeah. And human rights I define as anything that affects the rights or dignity or safety of another. Yeah, absolutely. Good, thank you. Anything else anyone wants to contribute before I go on? Okay, it's good stuff. Okay. Practical steps for ministries. And we've got four. And again, this is like, so in you and whatever kind of ministry you have, to sort of, apply that lens. But these are kind of four different areas: education and awareness, community engagement, spiritual practices, call to action. And I think we can apply that even just as a um, personal steps, but then we start expanding that outward into whatever shape your ministry takes. So education and awareness, host book studies and workshops, bring guest speakers in. There are always people in your community who are looking for places to go in and affect change, right? So education and awareness, even introducing, like, this slideshow will be available on the Esker website. Download it and put some of the ideas into your newsletter and just give people the language to use. I love, Elissa, having the conversation about how do we define human rights, and why is it okay to talk about human rights in a spiritual community? Like, really just giving people the awareness and the education that, we have a collective accountability to our fifth principle. Community engagement, partner with justice organizations. Again, there are so many ways to do that, even as a spiritual community. Unity Church of Overland Park is part of the Good Faith Network, which is dozens of churches in our county, from all kinds: synagogues, mosques, and mostly, of course, Christian. But we have dozens of churches who gather together and work year round. We take the summers off, so it's basically the school year. And there are 3 initiatives that are selected each year that they work towards creating a plan by interviewing professionals in the workplace and political leaders, and creating a plan to solve these 3 initiatives in the county. And then at the end of the season, which is in May, we have what's called a Nehemiah event, and the county commissioners are invited to a large church here, and you probably heard of it, the Church of the Resurrection. And 1,500 or more people, congregants, come and attend this. The county commissioners are there, and this the plans for these initiatives are presented to them, and they're basically, their feet are held to the fire to agree to put these items on their agenda and to do the work. And so we're talking about ending homelessness in our county. We're talking about addressing affordable housing. We're talking about establishing a mental health care intake center. So, like, these are big things that have all been decided by the congregations through sharing circles, basically, of what's important, what is impacting the people in this county. And then by deduction, and like literally writing on a wall, and then they look at all of these pieces of paper and see what are the common ideas that are coming up, the common needs. So, like, that's just one example. It's very political. We're working with the county commissioners, but it's all done by a body of faith, people, congregants. So look for different organizations like that in your communities that you can participate in, that don't become a direct conflict of interest, or are not palatable to your congregation. Look for the opportunities that are there, because they are there, and partner with people. It could be done even through, your tithing practice. So as a community, as people of faith, we want to support the work of the NAACP. Find organizations that are doing the work, that are supporting human rights. Lots of different ways to do that. Community engagement, spiritual practices, meditations, and nonviolent commitments. So, again, that really works with education, like, to understand, what are we talking about when we talk about nonviolence? We're not talking about, laying down and getting railroaded over, right? We're not talking about, passivity in a way that brings more harm. We're just talking about taking nonviolent action. So it's still action is still part of it, and a practice. What's the meditation that we can do? I love, Elissa, that you're posting prayers daily. So we're teaching and we're modeling for people how to create congruence over what's happening in the world with our spiritual practices and with our power as spiritual people. And then a call to action: encourage daily acts of nonviolence. There's so much in that. And Lisa, do unto others was a big part of the kindness campaign. Yes. Creating an amnesty chapter. Lots of good ideas. There's so many things we can do as spiritual communities. I think my next slide was doubled. Okay. Embody. Here we go. So I want to give you some resources. First of all, I don't know if this has been disseminated yet, but I do know the board approved it. I was unable to find it on the UWM website, but if I can add, I'm going to try to add it into the, here, I might need to stop sharing. Uh-oh. Here we go. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and see if I can add a file here. And I'll just give it to you, and then we'll read it together.
Hey, Jackie, I thought I saw a call for people who could join a social action committee through UWM,
Yes.
and then I couldn't find it anywhere.
I'm on it, so tell me. Do you want to join?
Yeah. I couldn't find it. I saw it in a
Yes.
newsletter and then it like disappeared.
Okay, yes, I'll make a note. Russell Highland is kind of the chair of that. And to be honest, this calendar year, I haven't been on the meeting because I was also part of the interim CEO search committee, so I'll be able to go back to the other. But we were able to pass this, and it's in the chat now, this unity statement of, let's see, now I need to find it on my screen here. Oh, I had to close it. Statement of social action position. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again so we can look at that together. And thank you for asking about that. We could definitely use more people. So this stand is the foundation of social action in the unity movement, where social action identifies the actions we take for communal well-being. Our collective wisdom and creativity combine to bring freedom, peace, love, equity, and justice into the world in ways we cannot imagine when we are working in solitary and siloed ways. We are stronger together. Who would like to read the next paragraph? Anicia, would you do that? Or anybody?
I can.
Thank you, Russ.
Our commitment to social action means we are committed to inspiring and encouraging each other in expressing our divine nature, that we are oneness individually and collectively. When we act from our divine nature, we boldly claim our divine identity moment by moment, choice by choice, through the highest spiritual principles in everyday situations. It means we are called to make a difference in our larger communities, to serve, awaken, support, and partner with anyone who faces injustice and oppression.
Yes. All right. Who would like to read that next paragraph?
I'll read it.
Thank you.
Where there are divisions of opinions, beliefs, and perspectives, unity embraces and cherishes the diversity of gender, age, race, ethnicity, national origin, range of abilities, sexual orientation, gender identity, financial means, education, and political perspective. This commitment extends to caring for our earth home and environmental sustainability.
Thank you. Next.
I will. Where there is fear of another, unity strives to foster a climate of purposeful inclusion, standing for everyone's right to create a life of their own choosing. Where there is oppression and hatred, We pledge to be an advocate for the well-being, respect, and civil freedom of every human being.
Yes, thank you. Next.
I'll do it.
Do it.
Any-
Okay, go ahead.
Go ahead, Lisa. Go ahead.
Any action that seeks to discriminate against individuals or classes of individuals based on prejudice, stereotypic profiles of national origin, class, creed, race, ethnicity, physical ability, sexual orientation, or gender identity is in opposition to the core beliefs and values established by our founders.
Good. And Jim, go ahead and read that last one.
We are stronger together when we recognize the interconnectedness and interdependence of all life. This is the foundation on which we stand when engaging in social action, to demonstrate and live out our commitments to freedom, peace, love, equity, and justice, and our communal well-being.
Good. Wow, right? I mean, there's no hiding in that. So like use this as your permission slip with your community if you feel like you need one, and share this. I invite you to share this with your community. So you can grab it from the chat. And I will see if they'll include it on the USCR website page as well. Yeah. So let me go back to my PowerPoint. And UCOP 7 Practices for Peace. I wanted to share that with you as well. And first, we'll just look at it. So this was created from the work of Deepak Chopra. And it's a program for peacemakers. Ask you to follow a specific practice every day, each one centered on the theme of peace. So Sunday through Saturday. I mean, another easy thing to just put in your newsletter or, make a handout and let people grab it on Sundays or put it in your lobby or, whatever. Again, always translate it for your particular ministry. Put it on your website. So our hope is that you'll create peace on every level of your life. Each practice takes only a few minutes and you can be as private or outspoken as you wish. Again, like Lisa suggested, we give permission for people to make it their own and to not have to do it, not to be rigid about it. It doesn't have to be done a certain way, but what is your way? So here we kind of just outline that permission, private or outspoken. I can always, just take a few minutes, or if you want to, do more, do more. But those around you will know that you are for peace, not just through good intentions, but by the way you conduct your life on a daily basis. And then there are some examples. So with Sunday being, I'm going to stay on this main outline here. Sunday is being for peace, Monday, thinking for peace, feeling for peace, speaking for peace, acting for peace, creating for peace, sharing for peace. And I think this is so powerful to really take you through the different aspects because some of us are thinkers, some of us are feelers, some of us are all about the doing and the acting, some are very creative, some are sharing and all about, the relational piece. So it gives you a way to be in that which you thrive in, what is your natural way of being, but it also challenges you to flesh out different aspects of your being because we can all be creative, we can all be feelers and thinkers and speakers and doers and all of that. So then there are just examples. So being for peace, take 5 minutes to meditate for peace, sit quietly. I'll go to Monday, thinking for peace. Thinking has power when it is backed by intention. So it's all in alignment with, our spiritual principles and our theology, and it gives just an outline. And then if you're working with it week after week after week, you would certainly be able to develop your own and replace the different, so let's look at Thursday, acting for peace. Today is the day to help someone in need, a child, a sick person, an older or frail person. Help can take many forms. Tell yourself, today I will bring a smile to a stranger's face. If someone acts in a hurtful way to me or someone else, I will respond with a gesture of loving kindness. I will send an anonymous gift to someone, however small. I will offer help without asking for gratitude or recognition. So there are options here. And, it's about creating our own habits. It's about learning to express our own value of nonviolence, our own value of peace, and to be that presence. Now, imagine if every unity ministry of every type was all doing this on the same week. imagine, the ripple that we would create in not only in this country, but, in consciousness. So I will add this to the chat as well. I have to close it out though. And so you're welcome to take it and to shape and reshape however you want to do that. Again, it's taken from Deepak Chopra's work. And I think it's even from probably 10 years ago at UCOP. Again, I pulled it off the server. Okay, now I want to take us to a couple of websites. First, we'll go to AGNT. And I'll share my screen again. Here we go. So the link is AGNT. It's in the PowerPoint, but I take you directly to the Season for Nonviolence. And so I'll just add this to the chat as well. Get to the chat. Oh, I'll add it after I'm done showing you. So I'll move around because this page is really huge. But if we go to the Season for Nonviolence page, there's resources for community, churches, and schools. So you could even make it, something where you gather some of these resources and take them to a school or give them to a teacher, and, it's about sharing and spreading it even beyond the walls of your spiritual community. Now on the AGNT website, you can sort of register for emails. I don't know how active that is, because you can do it as a minister, or you can see over here on the right of the screen, or as everyone, and for the 64 days. I haven't registered this year because everything is branded for last year or even before that. So I don't know if anything is happening this year. I have done it in the past and it's pretty cool. But there are still so many resources here. There are meditations that you can click on to access 64 meditations. There are 52 weeks of practices for spiritual activists. There are podcasts that you can download. There are memes with quotes by lots of different leaders. And you can see here, there are 69 tabs of resources that you can go through. Some of it is very usable. Some of it maybe is outdated, but it certainly gives you something to work with. And again, you can just cherry pick what works for you. You can sort of, rebrand or reuse things. So I just wanted you to know that this is available, and I highly recommend it. Lots and lots of good stuff. And again, we have through April 5th, April 4th to finish out the season. So there's still plenty of time, and or make a plan for next year. So however that works for you. And then I had one more. Let's see. Oh, the International Peace Museum that I wanted to show you. And I'll also share that URL. So they have a Season for Nonviolence 2025. And also on here, they're guest speakers. They have their own programming. But what I like to see, when I do that, is that I like to look at who are the guest speakers. And then I go look at their social media, their websites, and you find a treasure trove of resources. This is how I find new books to read, and new articles, and to really see who's active right now. I, of course, love always going back to Dr. King and to Gandhi and to, some of our ancestors of justice work, but to really know what's happening today, what events are happening. There's a movie screening, so I might go check out that movie. Lots of resources here as well. And again, it's a way to be abreast of what is current. And so I wanted you to have that website as well. Sharing my screen. All right, and I will put those in the chat. There's one, that's the AGNT. Here's the International Peace Museum. There you go. Okay, I'm going to stop the recording and give us, oh wait, I want to put the homework on before I do that on the recording. So then in case anyone is watching this, that they will show up prepared with the homework. And I think you're going to love this. Have fun with this. So choose a practice for Season for Nonviolence. Create a plan around that practice, then put it into action. And again, let this not be something that overwhelms you. Let this be something that screams your personality, right? Yeah, use your God expression, your unique iteration of the divine, to really and infuse that into whatever practice you're doing. If you are the type of person that wants to stretch yourself, do that. If you're the type of person, or you're at a place just in your life right now where you need this to be very easy, let it be easy. So I'm not I'm not trying to make this hard for you or put another something on your plate, but really just inviting you into a practice for the Season for Nonviolence. Choose a practice, create a plan, put it into action. It could be personal, it could be for a small group, it could be for a community practice, and then utilize resources. I just gave you these websites: AGNT, the International Peace Museum. I shared the document with Deepak Chopra's work on the 7 days. And discover your own. And then if you find a new resource, I hope you would bring that back to us on the 27th when we meet for our reflection session. And if you have an opportunity to engage whatever your practice that you've designed for this homework is before the 27th, then I hope you're willing to share it. And if not, just to share the plan. Again, we have through April for the Season for Nonviolence, so don't feel like you have to get this done in the next 2 weeks. But be thinking about it, working on it, and doing something that's drawing the Season for Nonviolence out in your life, so that you are a presence for peace in the midst of the chaos that's happening right now. Let that be a gift to you, as well as to those around you and who will be touched by whatever practice you make. So we will meet next on February 27th. And then just looking ahead at March, we'll be preparing for Pride. So I always like to do that in March so that you got plenty of time before June, which is Pride Month, to get things together and make a plan for that. So we'll be looking at preparing for Pride in March. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, and we can have just a few minutes for discussion and questions and that kind of thing.